What's up, Fielder students? Welcome to Table Talk. We're all sitting at tables. I'm sure of it. It's certain. We're sitting down. Here's me standing up. Here's me sitting down. Everyone stand up and sit down. Just to prove we're all at tables and we're talking to you. I'm excited about it. Today's topic is called Mastering Social Media. The reason why we're talking about this is because I think if we're honest, each of us talking about it and you who are viewing this right now, we're so easily mastered by our phone. This is important that we understand this, because if we're mastered by our phone, that means that we cannot be mastered by Jesus. We can only serve one master. We can't serve two. And so each of us are so easily addicted to it. We have it with us at all times. But we have to learn not to be mastered by it so that we can be mastered by Jesus. 1 Corinthians 6:12 says this. It says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. So before we even start the discussion, you start to hear from all these awesome guys, is we need to understand this. Hear me loud and clear. Social media is not bad. It is good. We are the problem. The only reason social media isn't bad, it's good. It is the way that we're actually able to interact with you right now during the pandemic. Everything that we're doing, we are blitzing social media so that we can connect with you. It's a good platform for us to connect. But we have to recognize that we're so easily dominated by it rather than it being dominated by Christ in us using it for that platform. So we want to talk about how to not let it master us, but how for us to master it for the mission. So first, in light of that, guys, I want us to talk about, I just want to hear from you. What do you guys think are some consequences of being dominated by your phone or social media? What do you think some of those consequences are?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I think one of the consequences, one of the things that when we are dominated by our social media accounts or our phone just in general is, I've seen in my own life, is I'm not present. And there's this quote, and it's talking about multitasking. We think when we multitask, we think we're doing everything right. But the quote says, when you multitask, you're actually doing everything wrong. And the whole premise behind that is just because you are not present. Think about it like this. Think about when you go to a restaurant and you're in line and you're kind of waiting to order your food. And the very first thing that you do is you're not trying to talk and get to know other people around you. What you do is you pull out your phone. And the reason why you pull out your phone is because you are mastered by it. You find your security in your phone, and it kind of masks your insecurities that you have. And so, and I see that in my own life. You know, one of the things that my wife and I do is when she comes home is that we put our phones away, because I know if we don't do that, I know if I'm on social media, I'm not interacting with her. I'm not being present with her. And so after a 12-hour day with her, just in nursing, it's like when she comes home, she doesn't want me on social media because she wants me to be with her. She wants me to be present. And I think it's the same way with students, just in general. Like when your parents are talking, like they want your full attention. They want your full presence so they know that they're being heard. Prime example, like when we're preaching, right, on Wednesday or Sunday morning, and when you're on your phone, it's a distraction because you're not present. Like your presence is divided. And so I think that's one of the things that you see when you're dominated by your phone, or you're dominated by social media, because you're not present. And so it's one of the things that we got to work on as far as the church, is just being fully present.
Savage, bro. He went for it. You guys, while we're teaching, you're on your phones. But in all seriousness, though, I think what you're saying, Thomas, we miss out on reality because we're trying to escape into whatever is here, that we're missing the presence that God has given us of his presence to be present in that moment to impact somebody through the power of the Holy Spirit in us. And we're not in reality. We're looking to something else. So that's a good word. We need to be present. Blake, what are some ways that you see the consequences of being dominated by social media or your phone?
I think one major consequence is just the risk of secrecy. Like if it's my social media, unless I'm allowing someone else to have access, only I see what's on my Twitter feed. Only I see my Instagram for you. Like it's called for you for a purpose. Like it's for me to see. Only I see the Snapchats I get, which I don't have a Snapchat, so I'm not getting any Snapchats. But for you, like you're the only person that sees those things. And so it's this risk of this idea of like secret vices. We have this tendency there's things that we are prone to want to desire and go look at, whether that's we're addicted to watching food videos, like videos on Instagram, and we spend hours and hours and hours just scrolling through these food videos, or if it's impure thoughts, like it's so easy with social media to keep that a secret, and you could be sitting in the same room as 20 other people on the couch right next to that person, and they could have no clue what's on your screen and what's going on, and what that is doing to you and to your heart. And so I think that's a huge risk, and a major consequence of being addicted to it and being mastered by it is just the risk of all of these secret vices and secret sins popping up just as a result of being mastered by social media.
Yeah. And it's so easy to fall into that.
Yeah,
it's so easy. We got to understand that the vices are vices because they're pleasurable, and they're outside of it's taking something that God created good outside of his design, and our eyes are pulled to it. Our hearts are pulled to it.
Yeah.
And when there's no accountability, doesn't matter how great your quiet time was that morning or anything like that in that moment. If there's no accountability, you're so easily pulled to it, and you can find yourself in a position you never thought you'd be. Thanks for sharing that, Blake. Well, what are some other consequences? What do you think, Joshua?
I think one of the big consequences that I fall prey to as well, and I have in the past, is compartmentalization. We become so different, right? So like, this is who I am at church, and this is who I am at school. This is who I am on Instagram, and it just kind of reminds me of the Spanish saying that says, "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres." It's basically, tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are. And what I think has happened is that depending on who we're with at church, or who we're with at school, or who we're with on social media, that in large part molds who we are and who we become. And I think one of the examples for that is, when I was in the military, I wasn't super active on social media in the sense that I didn't post all the time. I posted maybe occasionally something from when I was in Afghanistan, or maybe when I'd be at training, but I didn't really post much. And I think it's because my life on social media, I wanted people to think, oh, I'm just this guy in the Army who's too cool for social media. But in reality, two things were true. One, I was consuming so much social media content, not being present, like Thomas said, in my marriage. But also another thing was true is that nobody saw what was true about me, and that was all the junk and the sin and the anxiety and all the things I was actually struggling with. And so, yeah, I would say compartmentalization is something that even now sometimes we can struggle with, and I can struggle with, where we want to have our work life this way, our home life this way, and our virtual life this way.
Lo que dices es cierto, Joshua.
Gracias.
What he says is true. That's a good word. And all of us fall into that compartmentalization. So with that, Zer, what do you see, kind of along all those lines, what Thomas Blake said with secret vices, and now Joshua compartmentalizing? What are some consequences you see?
Yeah, I mean,
does anyone hear?
There's a little buzz, but me just thinking about all of those things, it's like we become what we like we become what we consume. And man, if we're consuming garbage and on social media and we are pursuing those things, like it doesn't matter what you're doing at church, like kind of what Joshua was saying, compartmentalizing, like it doesn't matter, like what you consume, that's going to affect your character. And if you're spending a whole bunch of time with the world rather than in the word, well, guess what? You're going to become more like the world rather than being like the word, Jesus. So
I think something that we have to realize that comes with all this, that the Lord is convicting me all the time, is that we are who we are alone before the Lord. If you want to really know who you are, it comes down to who you are when no one's looking, when it's just you and the Lord. And that, as a pastor, all of us, we can put up the front, right? Like Kyle can be living like the world, and yet he knows how to play the guitar and worship and make it look like he's intimate with Jesus. All of us who teach, we know how to teach with all of our hearts and get you to, but our character can be being transformed or conforming to the world rather than being transformed by Jesus. Who we are alone before the Lord. We all have to lean into that because he is the only one who's worthy to be our master, not our phone. So guys, now that we've talked about the consequences, what are some tips that you guys can give them to not be mastered by their phone, but instead master it and overcome these obstacles that are in front of them of not being present, of secret vices, of compartmentalization, and becoming like the world instead of like Jesus? What do you think, Thomas? What's a tip you can give them to being present?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do when Brittany comes home is I put my phone up, I put it away so that I can be fully present with her, asking questions about how her day was, things like that. And so my encouragement to you guys would be when you're at the dinner table, put your phone up. Like, don't even have it with you so that you can be actually fully engaged with your family, especially during a time like this with the pandemic that's going on, so you can actually be fully present with your family. So that'd be my encouragement to you guys.
That's good. What do you think, Blake? When it comes to secret vices, what would be something that you would encourage them to not fall into secrecy?
My wife, Katie, has access to my phone. She has full capabilities of looking at my phone, looking at my social media. She has any and all access she wants to everything that I do on my phone with my social media. And so for you as a student, what I think that could really healthily look like is taking a step of faith to allow your parents to have access to your social media. And maybe for some of you, like maybe that's not the case yet. I would encourage you to take that step of faith so that you can be held accountable. If that is already the case, for some of you students whose parents have access to your social media, they have access to your phone, I would challenge you to change the way you think about that, because my guess is that you don't like that. You're not excited about your mom being able to read your Instagram messages. I would challenge you to change the way you think about that as a blessing to you, that this, and God, thank you that I have parents who want to hold me accountable, not because they want me to be good kids, but because they don't want me to be led into sin. And so that's the main thing, is allowing people in to keep you accountable.
Thanks for sharing that. We need to be accountable. Without accountability, we won't end up acting in the way that we want to. So that's good. Joshua, what about you, man? What's a tip you can give them to not compartmentalize?
Yeah, I think the tip for compartmentalization is the same as Blake's, and it's really accountability. I think if you can expose, you're compartmentalizing to somebody, letting them know, like, I know that I might be this person in person, or I might be this person in church or whatever, but I'm really this person on social media. This is what I'm struggling with, and this is what I'm, displaying. I think by exposing that to somebody, it really, will allow them to pray with you and help you and bear those burdens with you so that you can get better. And I think, not being secretive about it. Don't be one person in person and then hide your social media from a bunch of friends you don't want to see who you are over here. I think being transparent, with people and saying, look, I know you in person, so I'm gonna go ahead and know you on Instagram. I'm gonna go ahead and know you on Facebook. I'm gonna follow you. That way you can see what I'm struggling with. And in that, we gain accountability, because then we can tell each other. I can be, hey, Blake, I see that you're doing this here, but you're doing this here, and we can call each other, or likewise. So I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just like Blake said, it's accountability and exposing, our compartmentalization to our friends and our leaders and whatnot. So, yeah.
That's a good word. What you're saying is taking it one step further. Blake, inviting a parent into your life that that you're accountable, that they're going to see what you're seeing is awesome. But then taking it one step further to go, the truth is we can only be accountable to the measure that we want to be accountable.
Yeah.
So you I want accountability, but you make yourself accountable. So if you've been compartmentalizing something, knowing that you've been doing this, expose yourself. And like we talk about all the time at Zoe, like confess it to a brother or sister in Christ so they can pray the God over you so that you can be healed and not walk in compartmentalization, but be genuinely who Jesus created you to be. So thanks for that. Zur, what about you, man? How can they become like Jesus instead of becoming like the world?
Yeah, I think because we become what we like, we need to restructure. We need to put more priority on the things that are important rather than on worthless things. And so there's this book, To Hell with the Hustle, by Jefferson Bethke. And in it, he has this, he calls it the 1-1-1 rule. And he's saying for an hour a day, a day a week, and a week a year, he turns off his phone. And I know immediately as you hear that, you're like, that's impossible. Like, that's crazy. But I look at it as there's practices that we're already doing as a church that you can do, right? So an hour a day looks like, hey, I'm going to do my morning devotional, turn off my phone for an hour so I can spend time in God's word. A day a week looks like, well, we practice Sabbath. So for the Sabbath, let me put aside my phone so I can rest and I can celebrate the Sabbath. And then last is, a week, a year sounds crazy, but a lot of us go on vacation. Well, why don't we, instead of constantly posting things in social media, turn it off and enjoy the moment, be present. 1-1-1 rule. I think that's really helpful.
And if you freak out about the thought of going on vacation and not being able to post all those, just put that sucker on airplane mode. Make yourself accountable to your parents that I'm just going to be on airplane mode so I can still snap those selfies and those shots with my family and being present with them. And then when I get home from vacation, dude, post them up, dude. Post them up. So those are the encouragements we have for you guys. Again, this all comes down to mastery. And it's coming down to Jesus being our master. I don't want to be mastered by sports. I don't want to be mastered by approval of others. I don't want to be mastered by anything but Jesus. And so don't let the phone master you. You master it. And these are some ways that we can walk in that. All right. We love you guys. We'll see you Wednesday night on Virtual Zoe.
Bye.
Peace.